crying out loud. I thought prison was supposed to be a form of punishment. On top of that, we also learned that a quarter of jailed foreign sex offenders come from just 5 countries alone. That's according to the first analysis of prisoner crimes by nationality. Romania, Pakistan, Poland, Ireland and India account for 457 of the foreign sex offenders in prisons in England and Wales. That's down to Ministry of Justice data obtained through Freedom of Information by The Telegraph. That's 1 in 4 of the record 1,700 foreign sex offenders in prison from June. 9.9% increase. Let's speak now to David Shipley, former prisoner, writer and researcher on prison and justice issues. David, let's start off first of all with those tow rags making their little bragging videos on social media from inside prison. How are they getting away with that? How are they doing that?
Well, I think this is one of those cases where, because something is high profile, it reveals how disastrously bad our prisons are. So just as we had Hadish Kabatu being released by mistake, and then we learned that hundreds of men get released by mistake every year. So with this, we've seen this video because this guy is high profile, because he threatened Nigel Farage. That's why he's in prison. But actually, phones are awash in our prison estate. They're everywhere. They're very easy to get hold of. They're brought in often now by drones, along with drugs and weapons and other contraband. And it's very, very common. If you go on social media, you can find a huge number of videos made by prisoners in prisons, often within their cells, in exactly this way. It's a systemic problem.
I mean, is there any sort of punishment if these prisoners are caught? I mean, this guy clearly is on news headlines today. Everyone knows he's got hold of a phone and has been making his content. Is he going to face, from your experience, any sort of extra rap as a result of that?
Well, the prison service did go and search him and search his cell on Saturday night, but they couldn't find the phone. So they, as far as I understand it, won't actually have charged him with anything.
So hold on, they can't find the actual physical phone, but the video's there, right? He's clearly been using a phone.
I would find that convincing evidence, yeah. But the issue as well is that a lot of the time, men will get caught with contraband. In theory, they can be given extra days in their sentence. Sometimes even they could be charged with an additional crime. But often it doesn't happen. Often what actually happens is they'll get the contraband taken off them. They'll be put on what's called basics. So they might get their TV taken away for a bit and be able to spend less money on canteen each week. But that's it. There aren't really any meaningful consequences a lot of the time.
Do you know, I always hear split opinions on whether prison is tough enough. There's a school of thought that says, no, it's not. Certainly our little mate with the AK-47 on his cheek, who seems to have found a partner in crime, seems to be having the time of his life. He doesn't seem too distressed at his standard of living while inside at His Majesty's pleasure. Other people say, yeah, you don't want to go to prison. No one wants to go to prison. It's actually pretty horrific. Which one is it?
I think it's kind of neither. It's very rubbish in that it's a lot of wasted time, a lot of sitting in the cell doing nothing. You know, most prisoners are locked up for 22 hours a day. But if we wanted a really punishing system, we'd get everyone doing hard labour. Right? It's not particularly punishing, but it's also not particularly getting prisoners to do useful stuff with their time, which means they'll be less likely to offend after release. It's not working on teaching good values. And that's one of the big things as well. You see it with this phone stuff. The prison system should be teaching people in prison to obey the rules and to be pro-social, not anti-social. But in fact, often they'll find that if they break the rules, not much happens. They're often allowed to...
Would you advocate, therefore, because I've often thought, it seems crazy to me that we import a lot of foreign labour for the jobs British people apparently don't want to do, whether it's picking fruit or cleaning public toilets. Would you sort of advocate something similar to chain gangs then for certain offenders? Actually, if you want to have certain privileges, you've got to go out, roll up your sleeves and get on with doing a job that benefits society, but in a sort of format that is made secure.
I wouldn't advocate chain gangs per se, but I think when prisoners are safe, and it can be managed safely, getting them to go out every day and work and pay taxes is a great thing. We do that in open prisons. I'd probably look at more for less safe prisoners, something like the military do at Colchester, which is their military corrective training centre, or effectively their prison. And there, everyday prisoners have to do hours of PT. They'll also get very specific bespoke programs. If they've got addiction issues or violence issues, they'll work on those. They'll get training. They'll get skills workshops. They'll get prepared for release every day in a way which actually works, because they only have a reoffending rate of 9%. So I think we should demand a lot more of prisoners. Leaving them in their cells to smoke drugs and make TikTok videos is disastrous.
What can we do about this drone situation, David? Because, you know, I've heard about this a lot before, that all sorts of contraband is getting into prison via drones. How easy is it to actually find something that might block drones from operating, or that might create some sort of extra high fencing that, I don't know if that's possible, they'd probably still be able to fly over the top. Is this something that we can address with certain resources and extra equipment?
There is. I mean, there's a thing called essentially anti-helicopter netting, it's called, which is you put over to block drones. In many cases, prisons haven't put that in place. They haven't got bars over the windows, which means drones can fly up to cell windows to make deliveries. There's also counter UAS, counter drone vulnerability assessments, which all prisons are supposed to have done. And according to the FOIs I've seen in many areas, 2/3 of prisons haven't even done those. We're getting more and more drones flying. It's been called by the chief inspector of prisons a national security threat. And it is, because weapons have been brought into prisons, not just drugs, not just phones, actual weapons. And the Ministry of Justice is just not taking it seriously enough. There's no centralized program of actually working out where these drones are coming from, interdicting them, examining the data on them, and going after the operators. It really, really lacks, and it's not good enough.
One would think that counter-helicopter netting isn't going to cost the universe. Surely that could be something that most prisons could afford to put in place.
It is, and there's budget for it. I think really it's a failure of leadership. I mean, remember, you've got to remember, this is a prison service that regularly releases people by mistake, or holds people past their lawful release date. Or in many cases, we see prison inspections where they don't know where prisoners are in the jail at any given time in a day. The level of competence in the prison system is so low, you really have to see it to believe it. It is an astonishingly broken system. And yes, it should be simple enough to put up some netting, to run night patrols, to interdict drones, basic stuff, but they are not doing it consistently and at scale. And that is creating huge harm within jails.
Looking at the latest figures obtained by the Telegraph under Freedom of Information into foreign sex offenders, it doesn't surprise me. But it turns out that a quarter of jailed foreign sex offenders are from just 5 countries. When you look at some of the statistics, that, you know, certain foreign offenders in prison, certain nationalities of foreign offenders, it seems to me their primary crime is sexual offences. I mean, this to me shows a significant breakdown in society if foreign men are coming into this country and committing sex crimes against the women of this nation. Do you think that this is a substantial change from previous years?
Well, it is, and it's getting worse because we are continuing to import very large numbers of men from countries which we know those men are likely to be much more likely to be sexual offenders or violent. So it's a choice. And I think you're right. So I think like Bangladeshis, 40% of Bangladeshis in our prisons are there for sexual offences, for example. And what we need to start doing is being realistic about the fact that not all nationalities are the same. You know, and we have a migration policy which refuses to recognise that reality. And in fact, we shouldn't be letting in lots of men from countries like Bangladesh, like Eritrea, like Afghanistan, where we know there are these high levels of criminality. They're very likely to attack women. They're very likely to be violent. It's a profoundly self-harming policy, and it is a crime, I would say, being committed by the political class of this country against the people, especially the women and children in this country.
I mean, what about when we get to organised crime? Because certainly the data on that is something that's fascinated me for a long period of time. I know that the underground illicit drugs industry in this country has been dominated by Albanians. In fact, they dominate most of the trafficking, be it sex trafficking, arms trafficking, drug trafficking. We know that Vietnamese and Chinese gangs run a lot of the cannabis farms in this country. Why on earth, I mean, are we not looking at this data and the government saying, right, given that a disproportionate percentage of Albanians who have come to the UK are actually coming here to commit the worst form of serious and organised crime, we're not going to let anybody else in from Albania until this gets sorted out?
Yeah, I entirely agree. It would be a very sensible policy choice. That's, I think, we need to start doing. And the other issue, of course, is the reason we have these massive foreign organised crime networks in our country is partly because our borders are so porous. And, you know, if organised crime groups want to bring people over, they can just bring them over on the small boats. They don't even have to formally enter the country. So it's a ridiculous system. It makes no sense. It's directly harmful to this country.
David, thank you ever so much. Always great to hear from you, former prisoner, but now today in a reformed character, writer and researcher on prison and justice issues, and a brilliant guest he always is.